Hello, everybody, and welcome back to the AEW Dynamite post-show review. This time it is AEW Dynamite Maximum Carnage for January 14th, 2026. I am not feeling that great tonight. I have a bit of a headache, so I am a little bit low energy today. So just a heads up in case anybody is like, oh, he didn't care about this episode of Dynamite, which is not the case because I actually enjoyed this episode of Dynamite. A episode I felt like it went by very fast as well. We had quite a bit more ad breaks than usual in this Dynamite, but not like an overbearing amount. Just enough where I noticed a little bit of a difference, but we had some big news coming into this show. Actually, I think it got broke during the show, but I'll just go over it at the top of this podcast. But once I get all the self promo out of the way, because that is always how we kick off the Kayfabe Central podcast. If anybody's in the live chat, make sure you drop your thoughts, your chats, all in the comments. Let me know you're in the chat. And obviously, if you're watching this after the fact, make sure you guys let me know your thoughts and stuff in the comments down below. Also, make sure you guys check out the Kayfabe Central website. That's where I post all my coverage posts, articles, written predictions, all that good stuff is up on the Kayfabe Central website. Once again, I apologize. My brain is all over the place because my brain is quite literally hurting right now. But I wanted to get on here for the AEW Dynamite post show, man. Nothing's gonna stop me. Not a little headache's not gonna stop me from getting on this post show. So, and I wanted to talk about Dynamite tonight and some other things that went into it. Make sure you guys are checking out the TikTok page, the Instagram page, all that stuff. That's for some of the announcements for what's coming onto the channel and future stuff regarding Kayfabe Central is announced, as well as the Twitter/X page. So make sure you guys go check all that stuff out. All that stuff is in the description below. Again, if you're in the live chat, make sure you drop your chats in the live chat. Let me know you're in the chat. I'll say hi to you, shout you out, and of course, leave your thoughts as we go throughout this post show in the live chat. Um, but the news that we had going into this show, or I believe I can't remember if it came out before the show, if it was during the show. I tweeted it out and reported on it during the show because that's when I saw it. But the Rascals are now signed to AEW. There's a report from Fightful regarding this signing, and then a few days ago that they were free agents, and it didn't seem like they were going to TNA. For some reason, I didn't expect them to sign with AEW, but I think that, and it is all four Rascals, all four of them. Khan got his hands on, so it's going to be make for a very interesting signing because these are obviously four very talented guys. But I can't see them doing anything major in AEW. I think they're there to put on some banger matches, maybe on Ring of Honor or Collision. I can see Collision maybe being more of where they're showcased. Maybe they'll eventually win the trios title at some point potentially. I think the Rascals, against the Ops would be a great one, or if Hangman and Jet Speed were to win the trios title this Saturday on Collision, I think the Rascals, the Rascals versus Hangman and Jet Speed would be a very solid match as well. So I think that's just what the Rascals are here for, to put on some banger matches. Like even individually, I can't see any of them getting anything major or huge. Like at most maybe like Wesley will get like a TNT title or something like that potentially. So this is very cool. I like this. And I'm excited to see the Rascals on a big stage again. Not to say that TNA wasn't, that big of a stage, but if we are being honest and, a little bit logical, AEW realistically is the bigger stage than TNA. And I don't think TNA really had anything for the Rascals, to be honest. I didn't see what they were gonna do there. And I think TNA maybe noticed that themselves, which is why they didn't try too hard to keep them. But this could have also been a Rascals thing where they were like, we don't think we're gonna get much in TNA. We're definitely not gonna get much over in WWE. Let's go put on some banger matches over in AEW. So I want to assume that's more of what went down. Obviously, I don't know all four men personally. I've met Trey Miguel very briefly before, but that's about it. So I don't know where their mindset is or what they were thinking. Going into this signing, I can't come on here and tell you guys that. Um, but I will say that I do like the signing for AEW, and I think that the Rascals are going to do very solid. Whether they're competing in Ring of Honor or on Collision, or I presume they'll be on Dynamite. They advertised them on Dynamite tonight. So maybe they'll have some banger matches on Dynamite, but again, I don't think they'll do anything major, but that's not a bad thing. Um, I also want to shout out that we have Zeta Steel making her Collision debut in a singles match this Saturday as well. Obviously, Collision is going to be taped tonight. They're probably taping as we speak. So it'll come out on Saturday as usual. I don't do coverage for Collision in case anybody was wondering. There's some times where I'll throw it on and just watch it, but that's about it. I usually don't do coverage for it or anything like that. I checked it out last week and it was pretty fun. It's like, especially if I don't have anything to do on a Saturday, it just gives me something to do, and I don't have to worry about work or anything like that. So it's more of like my chill, relaxed, laid back kind of show to watch throughout the week, if I do watch it. But I do think that they are going to toe to toe with the NFL playoffs this Saturday as well, if I'm not mistaken. So, unfortunately, I will be, well, unfortunately for anybody who wants any kind of, post show review of Collision from me, I will be cooped up with the NFL playoffs, more than likely. So, but yeah, Rascals are in AEW. It's gonna be cool to see what they do. But let's get into the show that happened tonight. Um, we kicked off the show with a backstage thing from earlier today with Samoa Joe saying that he is putting a bounty on the head of Hangman Adam Page. And then, of course, the bounty hunter Brian Keith comes into the frame and says he remembers 3 years ago when Hangman Adam Page beat him, and tonight he's going to make it personal and he's going to beat Hangman Adam Page and collect the bounty. AEW tends to like to do this type of thing. They have a guy with the gimmick called the Bounty Hunter. So, maybe this is their way of getting Brian Keith and Big Bill involved in something, because Big Bill was involved somewhat in the match that happened later on between Brian Keith and Hangman. So, let's transition to that. We don't necessarily have to go in order. Later on in the night, Hangman Adam Page did defeat Brian Keith, and Big Bill tried to get involved, but not Hangman actually, Swerve Strickland came out towards the end of the match when Big Bill really got involved and choked Big Bill out with a chain, allowing Hangman Adam Page to pick up the victory over Brian Keith. Um, so there was that. I guess we can get into the promo because it kind of played off this match, and then we'll go back to what happened at the top of the show. Hangman Adam Page and Swerve Strickland cut a promo, and Hangman Adam Page says he's going to take everything from Samoa Joe. That obviously led to later in the night where Hangman was with Jet Speed and said he was going to go after the trios titles. So when he said he's going to take everything from him, he meant it, and he's going to start with the trios titles. Swerve Strickland then says if MJF comes out on top and retains the AEW World Title tonight against Bandito, he at first says me, but or says I, but then says we are going to be coming after the AEW World Title. Obviously talking about himself and Hangman Adam Page. And then we had the advertisement that Kenny Omega was going to return, but obviously they didn't say when, and he returned right here in this segment. And he says whether it's a friend pointing at Hangman Adam Page or whether it's a foe looking at Swerve Strickland, he is going to get that AEW World Championship. Commentary really put this over as, three former AEW World Champions standing in the ring. And, it should be a moment that's put over, right? Because these three guys are very pivotal in the company. Kenny Omega himself also put it over by saying, three of the greatest, wrestlers to challenge for the AEW World Championship are standing in the ring. So, this was pretty cool. There's a respect going between Hangman and Kenny, of course. But then, there's a little bit of tension between Swerve Strickland and Kenny Omega. So, all of this made sense to me. Swerve Strickland wasn't just out there, buddy buddy with Kenny Omega like Hangman was because it's different stories, right? So I liked that selling point of this promo. Swerve Strickland and Hangman eventually go to the back, but while Kenny Omega is still out in the ring, Don Callis comes out, and he comes out with Lance Archer, Josh Alexander, and somebody else was with them. I can't fully remember who it was. There's too many people in this damn Don Callis family. Um, but Don Callis says if Kenny Omega wants to wrestle so bad, because Kenny Omega alluded to the fact that he can't just give himself a title opportunity. He needs to win some matches. Um, Don Callis said if he wants to wrestle so bad, he can wrestle Josh Alexander. Kenny Omega wants to do it tonight, but Don Callis says you must forget how things work in the Don Callis family, and you do what Daddy says, is what Don Callis says to Kenny Omega. Um, and Don Callis says we can do the match next week. So next week it is going to be Kenny Omega versus Josh Alexander. Now, I after this segment, I was thinking back to what Adam Martin said on the Kayfabe recap this past Sunday. If you haven't gone and checked that out, make sure you guys go check that out. It was a very good episode, and you can really get a hint of how a promoter thinks about certain things. We talked about, AEW, WWE, NXT, TNA, all that good stuff. So make sure you guys go check out that podcast for the Kayfabe recap this past week. But I went back to what he was saying of um last week it was Kenny Omega, or the couple weeks before it was Kenny Omega on a Titantron, and to that crowd that's in that arena that's not really seeing Kenny Omega live, it's him on a Titantron. And then this week they promote as Kenny Omega returns, so it's like, okay, we get to see Kenny Omega live, but this crowd doesn't get to see him wrestle, so we're gonna go next week, is when he's gonna wrestle. So I'm kind of seeing the point of view Adam brought up on the Kayfabe recap this week, of some crowds potentially getting robbed of Kenny Omega, because Kenny Omega gets one of the, if not the biggest pop every time he's on AEW television. And I'm not saying that like this is a bad thing, but that this is 2 weeks now where Kenny Omega kind of just didn't really do much. And I get that Kenny Omega's not a guy that's going to be wrestling every single week anymore. But maybe like a couple weeks from now, he's going to be wrestling every single week if he wants to be in the AEW World Title picture. But um, I can imagine just maybe, if anybody was at the show and, feels otherwise, then absolutely let me know in the comments. But I can imagine some fans may have felt robbed that, Kenny Omega was returning, but it wasn't anything but, a promo to set up something that's happening next week. I'm not sure where they are next week. If they are in the same venue, then that's totally different, and I'm just talking out of my ass right now. But if they are in a different venue, then I can imagine that at least some people in the crowd may have felt a little bit ripped off that Kenny Omega wasn't wrestling tonight. But that's just a little bit of something to throw on there, a little bit of nitpicking, I guess you could say. Overall, this was fine. Um, yeah, it was a fine segment. There wasn't anything too crazy about this. Um, let's go back to what match opened the show, though. That was Darby Allin and Pac. Obviously, Darby Allin says he wants to defeat Pac because he's defeated every other member of the Death Riders except him. And Darby Allin does just that. He beats Pac by submission, working the I believe it was the left ankle of Pac, and then beat Pac with a Scorpion Deathlock. Wheeler Yuta tried to get involved, but it didn't work out in the Death Riders' favor, and Darby Allin beats Pac with the Scorpion Deathlock. This was a solid match to open the show. You're not going to get a bad match when you have Darby Allin and Pac in the same ring. That's just never going to happen. I use this term and like reference a lot, but you know, Darby Allin and Pac are another examples. If you give them only like 6 to 8 minutes, they're still gonna cook in that 6 to 8 minutes. And they're gonna cook so much, maybe they'll extend it to like 6 to 9 minutes or something like that. But that's just that. You're gonna get a good match with these two, regardless of the fact. So I hope that this is the end of the Death Rider storyline for Darby Allin and the Death Riders. It's time to find something new for Darby Allin to do because this has been going on for a few months now, and realistically, they've built this as Darby Allin needs to defeat Pac to defeat every member of the Death Riders. There's nothing else left for him to do unless Marina Shafir says, "Well, you haven't beat me yet, so we're gonna have a one-on-one match." I doubt that's gonna happen, but I think we need to move on from the Darby Allin Death Rider stuff. Um, let's see. Let's go down the list here. Renee Paquette was with Brody King backstage, and Renee Paquette was asking him a question about Bandito, but then they bumped into Jonathan Cruz. Now I apologize to Jonathan Cruz for last week because I mentioned that I couldn't remember his name, so I just referred to him as the translator for MJF. So I apologize, but I've learned your name because I didn't know anything about Jonathan Cruz, to be honest, before, last week. I think I've seen him around before, but I never knew him well enough to like know his name. So I apologize to John Cruz. But I do know his name now. And Brody King says he has a match coming up, a standby match coming up, and John Cruz is the opponent. And John Cruz says, I'm not even ready to wrestle, and kind of just runs away. But he didn't run very far because Brody King caught him, dragged him out to the ring, and defeats John Cruz very easily. I don't know what Brody King's finisher is called. I keep forgetting, but man, that is brutal. It's like a flatliner position into a pile driver. It just looks devastating. And John Cruz sold it fantastically. I mean, that was a fantastic sell. And when you're in a match like this, when you're, in a squash match and you're putting somebody over, and you're getting squashed, then, your job is to sell and make that person look as good as they can. So John Cruz did an excellent job here as well. I like to give credit to that as well. Not just like this was a squash match. If the selling was very good from the person that got squashed, I'm going to give that person credit. And the selling was very good from John Cruz in this match. Um, we had a little bit of a hype package for MJF and Bandito. We then went to the four-way tag team match for a future shot at the AEW Men's World Tag Team Championships. That was between Jake Doyle and Mark Davis. I guess they're just going as Doyle and Davis or Davis and Doyle. The Young Bucks, GOA, the Gates of Agony, and Jet Speed were all involved in this match. This was a fantastic match. Again, you put teams like this in a match together, then it's not going to be a bad match. This was really fun. There was a lot of fun spots here. I went into this thinking that Davis and Doyle were going to win, and that they did. They defeat the Young Bucks, Gates of Agony, and Jet Speed. I forget who they pinned to win this match. Matches like this are just all over the place, and you kind of just focus on the matches that are the spots that are going on, and then who ends up winning the match. So this was a very solid match and very good tag action. After the match, the tag team champions FTR came out and brawled with Davis and Doyle. And security broke that up. Like I said, I figured Davis and Doyle were going to win this match because they had a stare down. FTR had a stare down with the Don Callis family, so that's obviously building to something. Speaking of the Don Callis family, if anybody was wondering where Andrade was tonight, he is going to be on Collision. Like I mentioned, they tape Collision after Dynamite, so that comes out on Saturday. He is facing oh man, I didn't even write it down because I thought I was gonna remember his name. I cannot remember who he is facing, the name of who he is facing. If it comes to me later in the show, then I will bring it up. But he is having a match on Collision. I believe that is his first match back in AEW. So that's gonna be fun to watch, see how Andrade is in his first match back in AEW. Um, Skyflight and Zeta Steel had some time tonight. On They had a backstage segment. I'm sorry, guys. I'm losing my train of thought at some points here, but Skyflight and Zeta Steel had some TV time tonight. They sent a message to Josh Alexander and Marina Shafir. Zeta Steel sent a message to Marina Shafir. And this is where what I mentioned earlier set up Marina Shafir and Zeta Steel on Collision. And then on also on Collision, it's Skyflight and I can't remember who they're teaming with. But they're having a match against a combination of members on the Don Callis family that include Josh Alexander. So it seemed like it was a good match. I just can't remember the full lineup of the match. So again, if somebody knows that, you can let me know in the comments. But I'm probably going to figure it out after this post show anyway. Um, that took us then to the another trios match, the Triangle of Madness versus the Cosmic Babes of Wrath, Chris Statlander, Harley Cameron, and Willow Nightingale. That had the Triangle of Madness coming out on top. This was a fine match. I'm still under the thought process of the Sisters of Sin need to get a little bit better in the ring. There were a couple, miscues here, a little bit of I don't want to say sloppiness, but not a lot of moves connected properly. With Sky Blue, she missed like a springboard. I can't remember. She went for a springboard something, and it didn't connect completely. So there's still some work to be done, but the Triangle of Madness winning this match absolutely made sense. This is going to set up the Sisters of Sin challenging for the tag team titles and Tekla challenging Chris Statlander for the AEW Women's World Championship, especially because Tekla was the one to pin Chris Statlander in this match. Referencing back to Adam Martin on the Kayfabe recap this week, he mentioned that a lot of the time these matches are put together so a future challenger of the champion can pin a champion, and that's exactly what happened here. So yeah, fun stuff here. The match could have been a little bit better, but it was fine enough. It wasn't like it was a terrible match. Um, yeah, this makes perfect sense. Um, Renee Paquette was backstage with Jet Speed, but this was interesting. They didn't get a chance to speak because Renee asked him a question, but Swerve Strickland, obviously with Prince Nana behind him, um, showed up and gave them some encouragement, gave them some motivation because they were down after their loss earlier tonight. And just gave them some motivation, and he walked away. And then Renee asked another question. They didn't get a chance to speak again because Hangman Adam Page came in this time, and then said he is going to be teaming with Jet Speed against the Ops for the Trios Championships. So I mentioned that a little bit earlier on as well, though, how that segment went down. So um, the big point here, though, for me at least, was the facial expressions of Kevin Knight. Now, I mentioned on it was either the end of the year awards or the ones to watch podcast where I said that I think that we're gonna get Kevin Knight turning heel on Speedball Mike Bailey this year. Now I said towards the end of the year. It's possible that they maybe pull the trigger sooner than that. I don't think that they should. I think they should give some, Jet Speed some more months to kind of cook. I think they should win the tag titles at some point as well. I think that needs to happen at some point this year before the split. I wouldn't rush the split. I think that needs to be a big moment. But there was definitely signs here for Kevin Knight. Maybe I read too much into it, but it definitely looked like some signs that Kevin Knight maybe turning heel very soon. So that was that. And then we're already at our main event. So like this post show is going by as quick as Dynamite felt for me tonight. And so maybe their just time management for their matches was like a lot better. Some, matches may have gone longer. It's very possible that things also possibly got cut from the show if things went a little bit long. But uh yeah, I feel like this was a decently timed show, even though the main event start like AEW always goes overtime a little bit, and that's completely fine. This match started around like the 9:40 mark or something like that. So, um, and they got some good time out of it. MJF defeats Bandito to retain the AEW World Title. Now, I was looking on, X and all that stuff, and there's a lot of people that aren't very happy with this finish. How it finished was, um, well, I should say that MJF was working the arm and shoulder of Bandito throughout this match, and it ended with MJF putting in the label lock, which Bryan Danielson accidentally called the yes lock on commentary. But MJF put that in, and Bandito passes out. Now, I didn't really have a problem with this finish. I don't see why everybody dislikes it so much. I thought this was a fantastic match. I mean, there was a spot where Bandito flew off the top rope to MJF like over the barricade as well. If you haven't seen that clip, definitely go find it somewhere. It's definitely somewhere. I posted on the Kayfabe Central X/Twitter, so make sure you guys go check that out. That was an amazing clip, and there are some amazing spots in here. MJF's selling is fantastic. He sold the Poison Rana fantastically, and so many other things amazing as well. When he got hit with the 21 plex, that was an amazing sell. MJF just knows how to make the babyface look good all the time. Yeah, I didn't have a problem with how this match ended, to be honest. It's better than Bandito tapping. I think that I think if he tapped, then I definitely understand, some criticism there. Um, but I think him passing out is fine. It's a typical thing of, he didn't give up. He passed out. He fought till his last breath. That makes it sound like he died. But you get the gist of what I'm saying. Um, After the match, MJF grabbed a microphone, um, and he gave Bandito his flowers. He said, I laughed when, people said you're a future AEW World Champion, but after wrestling you tonight, they are absolutely right. You are a future AEW World Champion. And because of that, I have to whoop you. Um, Man, MJF is just like, I knew he was gonna go somewhere with it, but MJF is just hilarious. Like, because you're a future world champion, I have to stop you from becoming a future world champion. And that's what he tries to do. And he tries to rip the mask off of Bandito, but Brody King comes down and runs MJF out of the ring and out of the arena. And the show ends with Brotito celebrating. Man, my trust in pro wrestling is very low because why did I think that Brody King was going to turn on Bandito here? I felt like there was just a huge clothesline coming or something like that. It's possible that we eventually get that, but it didn't make sense for it to happen here. Let the moment be on Bandito a little bit for the fight that he put up. It could have been a cool moment, to be honest. And it could have really given Bandito that baby face push. But everybody's loving Brody King right now, and he's doing his thing. I'm not sure what their plan is for him completely yet. I can't really scope out or map out what they do have planned for him. Again, there's like four mid card titles that he could go after, unless he is one of the next challengers for MJF's AEW World Title. Obviously, we got Swerve, Hangman, and Kenny chasing that title as well. So it's going to be interesting if he is thrown into that mix as well, and how he's going to, get to MJF. Unless it's a thing of, Brody King wants to defend Bandito, so he's going to get a title shot before any of those guys. I don't think that's the best route to take with this kind of thing, and I've never really been a fan of when, anyone, books this type of way of, because of um mutual hatred or whatever, this person gets a title shot. Like that doesn't really make sense, or like that's not how it should be. I've been a very big advocate of you should earn your title matches, and that's just how wrestling should be. Like I was kind of against Kenny Omega and Samoa Joe being for the AEW World Title, back at Winter is Coming because Eddie Kingston realistically didn't do anything to earn that title shot. But that's just me and the way I think about wrestling. The world championship should be prestigious, and somebody competing for that world title should mean something. Like Bandito tonight, it absolutely meant something. He earned his way to that. He won a tag title with Brody King, then he won Dynamite Diamond Ring. So he earned his shot to be in the main event here with MJF. So things like that I like, even if it's little things. Like I'm not saying that the person has to win 4 or 5 months of matches, but at least like have like a number one contender match or something like that, like they did with Bandito here, where it's like, okay, he won a number one contenders match, he'll get a title shot. So maybe they do that with Brody King potentially. Maybe they do like a multi-man number one contenders match, and Brody King wins this time around and gets a shot. So we got to see what they do. But I'm thinking more of along the lines like, you tried to hurt my friend, so I'm gonna get a title shot, kind of thing. But that was AEW Dynamite Maximum Carnage. Not a terrible show. It wasn't the best episode of Dynamite there's been. But there were quite a bit some positives. Quite a bit of positives, as of what I'm trying to say. That wasn't even a sentence, what I just said. There's quite a bit of positives here, and I don't think there was anything necessarily that like I looked at as a pure negative. Like I don't think there was anything from the show where I was like, oh, this is just outright garbage or anything like that. There was just things where I was like, oh, okay, like that happened, it's fine. It's not terrible or anything like that. So there's a bit of that on this show, but there was nothing like I was saying like, oh, it's garbage or this is terrible or anything like that. It was a fine episode of AEW Dynamite and a fine episode of Carnage. Of course, I want to know what you guys have to say and what your thoughts and opinions are, whether you agree or disagree with anything that I have to say. Make sure you guys let me know in the comments. Of course, if you're in the live chat right now, make sure you guys let me know your thoughts in the live chat right now. So, I can get to you guys and get to see your chats before we go off the air here. I'll plug some stuff really quickly again. If you haven't checked out my interview with Ref Karen, make sure you guys go check that out. It was a fantastic interview. She's a fantastic person, and we had a great conversation. She talked to me about, the ins and outs about being a wrestling referee. So if that is something that interests you, maybe you are a future referee watching this and want to learn some things, then I highly suggest you check that out. My interview with Brian Samuels comes out tomorrow at 5:30 p.m. Eastern. I haven't really posted anything about it today because it's just been kind of a hectic day today. And then last night was a little bit hectic too with, NXT and everything. And of course, personal life stuff. So, I apologize for not getting that out, but that interview is coming out tomorrow at 5:30 p.m. Eastern. That was another fantastic conversation, and I am recording another interview tomorrow as well. So yet another interview will be coming to the channel. So lots and lots of stuff coming to you guys. I got some more announcements coming soon as well. So make sure you guys are following all the social media pages, all that good stuff. We got more and more stuff coming to Kayfabe Central, more and more good things to come in the year of 2026. So make sure you guys are along for the ride. Hit the subscribe button if you haven't already, the notification bell, and all that good stuff, so you're up to date with all the videos, podcasts, and interviews that come to the channel. I'm starting to lose my voice because I haven't taken a single sip of water this entire 34 minutes I've been live. So I am going to get off live. I'm going to get some rest. I will not be doing a post show for TNA tomorrow. I don't usually do a post show, but I will be doing live coverage for the AMC debut. So make sure you guys go check out the Kayfabe Central website for live coverage of that if needed. But yeah, that is going to do it for me for this live. Thank you everybody for joining in the live, and thank you everybody in advance for watching after the fact. I will see you guys in the next one, and until then, take it easy.